Ada and Stefan, so nice to see you guys. I'm so jealous that you guys are in PV right now.
It's probably a little warmer here than it is where you're at.
Yeah, definitely. We're in full fall here in New York, so yeah. I mean, I do like the cooler weather,
Mhm.
but there's something about I have a piece of my heart in Puerto Vallarta all the time. So today we're going to talk all things Mexico, and because you guys have not only bought one property but two properties there, and I know that people are so curious. You also have a YouTube channel, Living Simply in Mexico, which I think is awesome, and it kind of gives you those tips and kind of really from a personal point of view, your journey of being in Mexico. So why don't you kind of give me a little bit about your background, where you're from, why PV, and when you first purchased there.
You want to start, Ada?
Sure. Well, I am half Mexican. My mom was from Jalisco, so it's one of those things where my journey in Mexico starts with the fact that I've actually got family members that live in Jalisco, however, not in PV. Stefan and I came here back in 2005 to Puerto Vallarta for the first time, and keep in mind my Spanish is not as good as it should be.
It's present tense.
Yeah, I speak perfect present tense Spanish. And actually flew one of my aunts who from this little small town in Jalisco to Puerto Vallarta. We actually stayed at the Cuatro Vientos Hotel here, and we just that was our first time here. We brought them to give them a different experience, and we really fell in love with it. And Stefan and I have traveled around the world quite a bit over our years together. I mean, we've hit pretty much almost all the continents. A couple of them are missing, but the thing is that every time we would go home, we would always be like, "That was fun, but no place like home." We're from the Bay Area. The exception to that is every time, well, we'd probably come down here at least 7 or 8 times to Puerto Vallarta before we kind of got the bug of thinking about wanting to move or at least buy a house here.
Yeah.
But every time we would leave Puerto Vallarta to come back home, instead of that, no place like home, we're like, gosh, I really miss Puerto Vallarta. So it's always stuck with us as being a little different.
Yeah, and my addition to that would be, we have traveled to about 40 countries overall and spent some time working in different countries and traveling a lot. And what I found with Puerto Vallarta is it is a very, very friendly place. It's friendly to expats, it's friendly to tourists, and it's friendly to locals. Everybody coexists extremely well here. And additionally, it's something very unique and wonderful. And yet it's only like a 3-4 hour flight from the United States, and so it's really easy to get to a nice easy airport. Good health care, everything is good about it. And I'm not trying to sell it. It has gotten popular over the last couple of years, but it's a tremendous place, and we decided to basically call it our second home, maybe our first home, depending on how things go over the next few years.
Yeah, it's kind of nice to actually fly from home to home, back home to home.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about when you decided to purchase a property. What was that process like? I know that you have to, put it in a trust. And did you find something right away? Was it really competitive?
Well, when we do that, we kind of thought of it as like a 3 to 5 year plan, like in the future. This was 3 years ago. And so we started out with just researching some realtors that were in the area. And we kind of found one that had a bio that seemed like he would match with us. And we just we just kind of sent out an email that said, "Hey, this is us. We'll be more serious in about 3 to 5 years, but we're just looking for this just in case something comes up. Feel free to ping us." And as it turned out, a few months later, less than 6 months later, we had an opportunity to fly down here for Thanksgiving holiday for a cheap flight.
Yeah, let me start there if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
So on the realtor, David Hoffman was the person we selected, and primarily because he worked at the same company I did out of college, and I figured that there were some similarities there, and I figured I could speak his language a little bit because you never know, right? So we connected, and it was talking about in the future we're going to get something, and so let's start talking now. Sorry to bother you because we're not going to buy right away. But what happened is we decided, I think it was on a Thursday, I saw some cheap flights to Puerto Vallarta from San Francisco, And it was traveling, and I texted her at 6 a.m. It's like, hey, do you want to fly to?
It was a 4 a.m. text I got.
Yeah,
and it was
4 a.m.
And it was about a 2-second
Sure.
response. Yes, let's go. So 2 days later,
I love that.
Yeah, we were on a flight to PB. So we were
Yeah.
like, while we were here, we're like, hey, you know what? Let's go urban hiking. Let's walk around and really just make sure that this is something we want to do. And maybe while we're here, we'll see if David can show us some things.
Sure, just show us some places.
Just to get an idea, just to kind of reinforce that. And that was all our intention was when we came on that short week.
And we ended on with an offer on a house.
Yeah, that wasn't.
Can I
So
tell you,
it
that
was
is
not
the
planned.
first time I've heard that.
Yeah. And the reason why is there's a lot of properties out there, and we had been looking. There's some great MLS places you can look to see what's on the market. And there was this one house that we were looking at, and it was a lot more inexpensive than the rest that we saw, and it had an ocean view. And we took a look at it, and it's like, let's take a look at it. So David showed us all the new properties and other properties, and this was a lot more inexpensive. We looked at it, and we said, you know what? We could buy it, lock it up, and just leave it for 3 years, and you couldn't hurt anything.
Right. And I think that's an important thing is, at least now having access to the MLS, you can do a little bit of your research. We, from our trips prior, had a good idea of what we wanted. We wanted a hose down house.
Right.
We wanted a house, a traditional house that had a view. That that worst thing happens, you hose it down, you're good to go. We didn't want anything fancy. We didn't want to feel like we were living in the U.S. and Mexico. That's what we personally wanted. Yeah. And so when we saw this house that truly was, this house didn't even have a fully complete roof on it.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, well, it's concrete and whatever. And we happened to actually, the next door neighbors who were living just adjacent to this one property happened to be at home, happened to see him. And I actually asked him about, what did you do? And right away, he actually, he said, this is how much it cost us to renovate, ours. And I kind of said, do you mind if we look? So we were like going to barge in, but we go and we looked. And at that point, we realized that actually renovating was not as scary of a thing as we might have thought. It was much easier than renovating anything that we would back home because we weren't looking for U.S. perfection. Yeah. We were looking for rustic Mexico. Yeah. And in doing so, it was kind of a no-brainer for us.
And I think the key point for me in all of that was if you're looking for a U.S. type level or a Canadian type level of fit and finish that you turn the key, open up, and it's exactly what you want, then I felt that you'd pay a premium for that. And that's based on what we saw in the property. But the property, there's some downsides to the property we purchased. It was up 65 steps. That's a big downside for many people. But then also 65, yes.
Yeah.
It had a rocking view, but you had to go up a lot of steps. So that was a limiting factor. And then the other aspect of it was that people I think get turned off a lot by, oh my gosh, how do I even start dealing with a contractor in Mexico, right? And since we already from the neighbor had a connection, he gave us a referral, and he said he did a wonderful job. That was a start. And then obviously labor costs are much less here too. And so you can build what you want, a lot easier than the U.S. and at a fraction of the cost.
So did you end up renovating?
Oh yeah.
Yes, yeah. We basically there were some things in it that you had to watch out for. Like there was an ungrounded 110 outlet in the shower. That's probably not good. Like literally in the shower.
Oh my God.
So there's that. There's other things like the top bathroom had a toilet and a shower and no sink.
There was only one actual sink in the house. It was on the second floor.
Yes.
If you're not counting the kitchen sink. So it was a quirky
it's
house.
Quirky, yeah.
But when you got to that third level, you had this amazing view of
the entire bay.
The bay. And so that's really, that's what we were buying was that being able to sit on a hammock and, look outside at that view. And it wasn't about the inside. It was actually really about outside.
And we like actually like the El Cerro neighborhood. And so if that's north of the Rio Quale, so you have the romantic zone, which is directly south. This is directly north of that. So you're still by the Malecon area, and it's a really wonderful area. And that's also, by the way, Gringo Gulch, which a lot of people talk about too, which is just north of the Rio Quale as well. That's part of El Cerro. And so this house was part of El Cerro, just on the northern.
El Cerro.
El Cerro. I'm still a gringo. I'm still learning.
El Cerro.
So where you're located, so would you say you can walk to shops and walk to downtown and that sort of thing? Is that a convenient area?
Yeah, or I would say 15 minutes to Los Muertos Beach.
Yeah, we're basically a 6-minute walk down the hill, and you're at the Malecon, so that's the main boardwalk. Yeah. And then from there, it's maybe another 10 minutes or so, and you're at Los Muertos Beach.
So in terms of purchasing, how was that process like for you guys? Because it is different than purchasing in the U.S. Was it nerve-wracking? I mean, did it go smoothly? Is there any advice that you'd give to people kind of going now that you've been through it twice?
The 2 times we've gone through the purchasing process, they were very different. But I would say in both cases, it's really important to find a really reputable realtor, right? And someone that's full service, because it's really hard to understand, even down to the level of transitioning water bills and, utility bills and understanding trusts and knowing when you have to have easements and all this other stuff. The realtors here, if you pick a reputable one, can do the entire process for you, and they make it very easy for you.
They basically, their in-house lawyer call us and actually help to answer questions that we had that might have been especially with the second purchase, we had some more specific questions, but to really put you at ease, so you really know kind of what you're getting into. And there's something good about, knowing that there's sort of somebody on your side that can help you. And then the transition to, once we got the house, yes, the utilities and everything was easy, to the point where the folks that we were using actually assisted us, to when we weren't here for the first couple payments, we actually were able to pay them, and they just went down and did it for us, just to kind of help bridge that gap initially.
Yeah, that was huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to buy another property?
Ada, that's all you.
It's not all me.
True.
Part of so once again, we bought this house, the first house on a hill, awesome, love it, absolutely wonderful, perfect. One of the things that is really important to me and why I wanted to come back to Mexico was really circling back and having this connection back to family and hoping to learn my language again, or for the first time, more than high school Spanish, and really bring it full circle and have something for our daughter. The challenging part with this house on the hill, for me, is I'm all about move it or lose it. I'm kind of I see the lady right below us that's 80 years old and she goes up and down the stairs. That's going to be me too. However, I do have family members that have polio. They have neurological things. There's no way they can even make it up that stairway. And so I was we needed a place that really could support our intention, which was to have a gathering place, to have some place to bring people together, but also the flexibility, because what I do with wellness and Pilates, physical therapy, and just overall, life quality, this is something that I'm going to continue to do forever. I can't imagine not doing it. And one of the things that we have learned over the 3 years of having our house is once again, how much more we really continue to love Puerto Vallarta. It's so vibrant. You feel alive. You feel present. Walking on the cobblestones, it's lighting up all these good things in your body and brain. And I started telling my patients and my clients, I'm I want to find a place to do little retreats or bring you guys down here. So I was already starting to look at just places to rent on Airbnb, to bring people down, to kind of say, let's go walk around. I want to show you why I like it so much. And it was part of that kind of collective idea where we then sort of kind of got more into the idea of like, what if we were to get something a little different that could support actually having us down here potentially longer term, potentially full time, and where we could still work.
Yeah, I think.
So what did you find?
We found that.
Yeah, yeah.
We found a place that, well, if I back up a second, so in this whole process, you mentioned we have a YouTube channel. Well, one of the videos that we wanted to do was we were comparing the romantic zone, which they call the romantic zone, which with Gringo Gulch.
Or Old Town.
Or
Yeah.
Old Town, with Gringo Gulch, which is actually older and also I think more romantic personally. And so we did a little video on the restaurants that were literally, they're a 5-minute walking distance from us. And as we were doing this and filming some of this footage, we ran across this house that it was for sale by owner at that point in time. And we kind of saw it and looked at it and we're just like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And then after we made our video, we started watching our own video. We were like, we got to look back into that house. And by then she had listed it. And so at that point in time, when we actually came into the house, the moment I came in here, I was like, this actually has exactly what I want. It has a large space. It's, I can see myself bringing, if we had guests here, let's do a little Pilates first, and then let's go out. And now we're warmed up, and well, I'll have to warm up in Puerto Vallarta. But now let's go out and actually enjoy what we see. And so just having a place that really feels just where you can feel like you're connected and present and like I said, just a friendly, warm gathering place.
Yeah, the one thing I wanted to add though, and I think this is really important for us, and that is there's a lot of wonderful areas within Puerto Vallarta to live. What was interesting is, very close to our first house and actually close to our second house, or just on the opposite sides of it, are some really good restaurants and hotels. You've got La Capella and Casa Kimberly and Hacienda San Angel. And what's really interesting about that is the history behind all that, because a lot of people think of Casa Kimberly and Liz Taylor, right? But what they don't realize is all the other celebrities that were around that, and that Richard Burton had a wife after Elizabeth Taylor, which was that he bought Hacienda San Angel for. I think it was I can't think of something Bursa. But anyway, I digress. But there's some interesting history behind that. And then there's also history because you obviously you understand about the celebrities, but then there were the local people that really established Puerto Vallarta and put it on the map that were tied to those celebrities. There were several architects like Guillermo Wolf or Freddie Romero that really established. If you go down and look at some of these houses, like Construyo de or
they got little placards.
Little plaques. And not many people notice that. And so a lot of these houses have that. And then obviously their family are still living around here today. And so there's some interesting people. When I look at an old photo, I don't see Liz Taylor. What I look at is I look at the people around Liz Taylor and who was there with her. And those are the people that I think are the most interesting about the neighborhood. And so that to me was pretty crazy. And we found like the second house we purchased in 1961, there was a Islands in the Sun vacation mailer that talked about two houses. One was Casa Kimberly and one was the house we purchased, which is pretty crazy. And they even gave I think it was low season $8 a night, high season $12 a night for the entire house.
This is 1961.
Yeah. So
and Casa Kimberly was expensive. It was $15 a night.
Yeah, plus $2 extra per person.
Right.
So
tell me a little bit about the house. How big is it? How many bedrooms?
It's a lot of house.
It's the biggest thing we've ever had in our lives. Go Ada.
Yeah. Given that we're from the Bay Area, we're used to
San Francisco Bay Area.
Yeah, San Francisco Bay Area. It's a lot of house. It's about 5,100 square feet. So it's substantial, and it's indoor outdoor, a lot of it. So it's not necessarily all indoor. We have no yard. Our house has like this huge terrace on the top. We have right now we're sitting in an open air courtyard. So when it rains, there was a rainstorm the other night, and we had basically rain on both sides of us, but we're dry in the middle.
Yeah.
And it was
awesome.
just a really cool experience that you don't get this in the U.S., right? These are the things that really make Mexico feel like Mexico to us.
Yeah, and you look, there are some places you look at the beams that those are like hand sawed beams that were placed there probably in the late 50s, early 60s. We don't know. In fact, if anybody knows anything about our house, we'd love to hear it because we're just fascinated by the history. But it's been around for so long. It's really something that you don't get in like all houses like where we live in the San Francisco Bay Area that all look alike, right? This is extremely unique, and that's really what drove a lot of this.
I feel like we stumbled upon and purchased a historical landmark.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It's pretty cool. But I think having the idea of what you were wanting. We didn't go out there with that intention initially, but as we started developing what we wanted, it kind of all came together.
So I guess that you would advise that the same for anybody who's looking for a home there is to really kind of hone in on what it is that you want and what you maybe more importantly what you don't want.
Yeah, what you don't want and what you want to use it for. How you envision yourself living in this house. And right now, what we're trying to envision a little bit is how are we utilizing the two houses, because we're not getting rid of the other one, because as rustic as it is, it has the view that this one has a completely different view. Here we have this amazing mountain city view. And once again, we're on the other side of the hill. We've got the full bay view. And so they complement one another. But if you know what you want, it just makes it a lot easier to give the person who's assisting you, your realtor or whatever, an idea of what to look for. And it makes it a lot more, the process a lot more expeditious.
Every colonia here there's pluses and minuses to every single one of them. And depending on what you want to do, you'll find a place that's right for you. And so, we just absolutely love it here. It's a bit hilly, for some people, they may not like that. The difference between our two houses, obviously the bigger house is in a less dense area. And so it's a little quieter. It's a little bit more tranquil, whereas the other one is in a high density area. And you're in the middle of it, right? And so
roosters 24 hours a day and church bells.
Not 24, but close.
Well, it can be 4:30 in the morning or 4:30 in the afternoon. That
That's
rooster doesn't care,
Doesn't care.
And that's okay. I mean, and there's noise over here too, but it's a different feel.
Anywhere downtown, that's one thing I would say is if you're looking for quiet solitude, it's better to look away, maybe south. Or north to like Nuevo Vallarta or places like that. We like the excitement of city life. We like the idea we can walk out of our door. How many restaurants are around here within 0.3 miles? Like 100?
Yeah. There's within 3 miles there are over 110 restaurants that or attractions. 110 attractions that are within 0.3 miles of our.
They're mainly restaurants.
But a lot of them. Well, and still,
I mean, Vallarta also has a lot of art galleries and that sort of thing.
Ton of art galleries, and so now we're kind of, like I said, we're really situated in the middle of everything. We have no intention really of getting a car. That was for us. Once again, the things that you want to consider is if you are living further away, how are you getting back and forth? Because if you're south, it's more tranquil, but there aren't like large, stores or anything down there. If you need a loaf of bread, you're going to have to, drive somewhere to get it. Here, I can walk, about 3 doors down and I've got a little tienda there and I go buy my little bag of chips or whatever I need and come back. So,
and other things too, like Uber, for instance, Uber in Puerto Vallarta is pretty good. But once you get to Nayarit, Nuevo Vallarta and north, I don't think there's a presence there. So at that point you're using taxis and stuff. So we love the idea of getting around here in Puerto Vallarta. It's super simple.
And we use all forms of transportation. We use Uber, taxis, and buses.
Whatever's most convenient in our feet.
Less buses during COVID, but prior to COVID, we were on the bus a lot.
So you mentioned going to the tienda to eat, to buy your groceries. Are there other places? Do you go to the big grocery stores? Do you go to Costco?
Absolutely. Yeah. You go to Costco for the big stuff, and then sometimes you realize I need an extra little bag of chips for my salsa, and then you like I said, you buy these little things. She'll sell eggs individually. So I can go down over there and buy 3 eggs, and bring it back. So for us, because we're going back and forth, The tricky thing is going to Costco
Mhm.
might be getting the beverages, getting the big chunks, but I don't want to have a huge thing of, I don't know, tomatoes if
Yeah.
we're not going to be here for
Yeah.
that long. So,
And there's other things too. I would say we use Costco primarily for consumables. So like large things of water, lots of, beer, wine, that sort of stuff. Beverages, I guess, in
Beverages.
particular. But the other thing is we try not to try to buy everything like the United States, right? A lot of people don't realize, actually there's a video on this, a lot of people don't realize bed sizes are different in Mexico. And so if you
Right.
want a US bed, you go to Costco and get a US bed. But if you buy sheets here, they're going to be for Mexican beds. And so, things like that. So we try to stay as local as we can be on normal, normal day-to-day purchasing of things. And gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. And the other thing too, we try to stay away from fancy sort of wood cabinetry and things of that nature. We basically go steel, tile, and concrete. And
Oh, why is that?
because it's people, the construction workers and people that are building out things, that is what they're masters at. And it's about labor because all they have is steel, tile, and concrete. They can do pretty much anything with that.
and considering the climate,
Exactly, the
because
climate too.
this is a hot and humid climate, and you realize quite quickly why there's so much tile, and tile becomes your friend.
Yes.
And that place where the paint keeps peeling, you know what? You just put some tile over it, problem solved, and you have this decorative tile there now, and it's a little party on that wall.
Yeah.
So it really is that, and I tell you, the steel workers here can make the most
Amazing.
beautiful. You can pretty much come up with the concept, and they can create it, and you can have someone local create cushions, and so the thing is I think that's what's great is that you can still you can have something that's going to last, because you know what, if you go and you buy like American style furniture for a Mexican style house like ours is, like I said, we're not living in a condo,
Yeah.
we're living in open air, we have to consider buying like the locals do, or buying what the type of furniture that there was there.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're looking for a traditional house, and there's a lot of questions that people say, hey, should I bring down my things from up north, or should I sell them here and just start anew? And the challenge is, if you bring down things, there's really only certain types of wood like Ferota, and some others that are Primavera. Some others that are resistant to termites. They're not foolproof, but are resistant to termites, and humidity, right? Because if you bring anything that's compressed wood or wood that's like pine, things of that nature, the humidity or the termites will eventually get it. And so things like that. Other like metal. Like I brought down a toolbox, and I could tell immediately what was not stainless steel. Everything rusted away in the toolbox in the house, just sitting there.
Wow.
And so yeah, it's pretty amazing. So you really have to watch what you bring down. If you're worried about something and you have an heirloom that you want to bring down, be very careful what you bring down, because it could get destroyed very easily in this climate.
That's so great. That's such great advice. So as we wrap this up, um, if people are, curious about, wanting to, whether it's part-time or full-time, um, I love the things about like what to bring and what not to bring. Are there any other things that you feel like people really need to keep in mind, being that you've kind of gone through this process and you've really documented the process as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I think being open-minded, and not holding the expectation that this is the United States or Canada, right? This is Mexico. Things may take longer. Like houses might close in 2 weeks to a month back home. They might take longer here. Like I said, COVID has made that a little bit more delayed. So if you are patient, that is important. And I think also realizing that there are so many different types of houses to get. We have the types that we have is we went rustic, full, and really renovating it to a established traditional historic, but still Mexico house. But then you have everything in between. You have condos that are already established. You have newer, more modern condos. You have newer houses, and it just depends on the neighborhood that you're in. And once again, so there is really a large range of things that you could potentially choose from. It's what you want. If you want to be near golf, that's fine. Maybe not here where we live is the place. You want to be up a little closer to Nueva Vallarta or Marina Vallarta, and that's going to be the perfect location for you.
Yeah.
So it just really depends on how you want to spend, your life.
Yeah. And just to emphasize that, if you're looking for a modern, beautiful, very clean, and every angle is exactly 90 degrees, exactly the angles it should be, and quiet, and you're not worried about, living very much in the environment, a modern condo may be perfect for you. That's great. We've got friends that have that, and it's just absolutely wonderful. That's not, us, right? And so we like, it's kind of the old style. The other thing I wanted to mention, and someone posted this, and I responded back to them, and it tended to get a lot of attention. Someone said, "Hey, I've got like a 5 or 6 year old Mercedes that I really want to keep. Can I drive it down? Should I drive it down and use it in downtown Puerto Vallarta?" And if you're living in a nice place with a garage, you can park it, and you're driving longer distances, and there's some places where a car like that would be good. But my analogy was, it's kind of like, bringing a newer, higher end car in the middle of, say, the Romantic Zone or Gringo Gulch. It's kind of like going hiking in dress shoes, right? If it's going to get bunged up, this thing is going to be worn out. There's going to be some bad things that are going to happen to it, right? Because that's just the nature of it. And so what we've done is we've really embraced that here in living the way we do in the houses that we purchased, and it's just really a wonderful feeling.
It's still simple. It's still simple, even though we just added a little complexity to it. But
it's just a bigger house.
It's a bigger level of simple.
It's a bigger level of simple. Yeah, and actually, to note on that car thing, I believe if you do move down here and you import a car, there are certain taxes. That they're import taxes that you have to pay. So it actually may not be worth it for people to drive their cars around
and residency status. There's all sorts of things that are.
You can drive it down for a certain time and then have to drive it back. Right. Yeah. That's a potential. But if you bring it down for good, then I think it becomes really, really expensive, and there's a lot of red tape. So that's another very good reason. One final note too. A lot of people ask about safety. And of all the data that I've seen and the experiences I've had, Puerto Vallarta is a very, very safe place, relative to any other metropolitan area in the United States, right? The one thing I would say is it's not about your personal safety, like you have to worry about it going out. Obviously, you don't wear a lot of bling, and you don't go out at night, get drunk, and walk down a dark alley. That's, things that you shouldn't do. The safety issue really is that you have to watch out for is the basics, like,
sidewalks.
Sidewalks, right? That's where the safety comes in, right? Because there may be a big drop off, there may be a hole, you go across the street, there may be cars coming, those are things that we in the United States take for granted that are in perfect shape. And here you really have to watch for yourself and watch out for those things, because if anybody asks me what's the most dangerous thing in Puerto Vallarta, I would have to say it's a pothole.
Yeah. and for me, that's part of the presence. I said, you better not be texting and walking at the same time, because it's not going to end well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Ada and Stefan. It was so great to talk with you.
No worries.
And I look forward to following you and continue your adventure.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yes. Take care, Rita.